Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Welcome to Politics Done Right from the studios of KPFT 90.1 FM, Houston, your community radio station. We have a great program for you today. Yes, you know who is with us today? The one and only Thom Hartmann. We're going to be discussing the history of Big Brother in America. It's going to be a good show. But anyhow, we all know all the turmoil that's occurring in this country right now. And I tell you what, I want everybody to just sit back. Watch how we handle Ukraine. Watch how easy it is for us to say we need to send equipment over there. We need to spend the money over there. It's the right thing to do. But I don't want us to ever forget that the right thing to do here in America is to rebuild the middle class and to uplift the poor into the middle class. And if we can find the money and be so ready to invest in Ukraine and in any time, any war that we see fit to, we should consider the plight of 60 to 80% of Americans as a war as well and act accordingly. You know what time it is? Time to get busy. You know, I was watching Morning Joe this morning, and there is a piece that really got to me because it was like the tipping point as far as Republican senators and neoliberal senators wanting to give Ukraine everything that they ask for. After all, it is existential that they get this type of support to ensure that they can they continue to mature into that fruitful republic, into that republic maintaining its democracy, etc. And you know what? I agree. Ukraine is not pure. Ukraine suffer from the same ills that we suffer from in America in a lot of ways. I mean, when it comes to those students who were students from Nigeria and other places trying to get out, they saw that this country that wanted America to help out with its democracy, to keep it away from that intruding, invading army, they still couldn't get past their own prejudice. So they're not pure, but yes, we want no invading country to come into another and take it out. But when you watch how America has put itself in a position to help unabashedly, completely, without doubt, you have to ask yourself certain questions. I just want you to listen to this exchange because, you know, it's like we have to do this. We must do this. Check this out, and then we'll take it on the other side.
I'm not asking you, obviously, to do the White House's bidding here. You would never do that. But do you at least understand the stakes are so momentous when we're talking about whether we get it right or get it wrong could end up in a nuclear war?
Of course. And that's why I've said I'm not in favor of declaring a no-fly zone, because you don't get to declare a no-fly zone. You have to enforce one. And that would mean putting American pilots in the air and getting into a direct shooting war with Russia. I'm not advocating that. But I am saying that you can't let Putin say because he has a nuclear weapon, every other thing he does can cause us to self-deter. There are 44 million Ukrainians, something like 6 or 7% of the population has already fled. If Putin moves forward with targeting civilian populations for months or years, if the resistance could last that long, are we saying that at every point he can escalate to this, he can escalate to death camps, he can escalate to that, And we'll just constantly say, well, because Putin has nuclear weapons, at no point can we do more. We can do more. The Ukrainians have demonstrated a will to fight. This is a population of freedom fighters on display, their courage on display for the whole world to see. And if they'll shoot it, we should ship it because they're willing to fight. We don't need to do the fighting, but we should be doing the constant resupply. The burden of proof should be on us about why we wouldn't supply every single weapon that they request.
Think about this. Just think about this constant resupply. Whatever they ask for, we should give them. Whatever they need, we should provide. Suppose we thought about doing these same things for the poor, the middle class who is struggling, those who need childcare. Suppose we realize the importance of getting students relief from their student loans so that they can execute their better beings in society. Suppose we just thought about these issues. Suppose we thought about just what's necessary. You know, we are always willing to give them guns, to give people guns to kill. We are always willing to provide to others. Why can't we provide for what's going to be best for a country? Think about this, folks. If we change all those words of war in that sentence from Senator Sass and we include it in that, or we put in that, helping the middle class, solving the problem of childcare, solving the problem of student loans, solving the problems of family leave, and all these other issues, solving the problems of the environment, because they are all existential. Why don't we think that way? Why are we programmed not to think that way? Why are we programmed to forget so easily about our humanity and so often about just the fight? A few days ago, Alex Vindman went on to Lawrence O'Donnell and he tried to explain to Lawrence O'Donnell that we need to do so much in Ukraine. We must go in there, and well, he wasn't necessarily saying go in there with guns, but give them the planes, give them everything that they want, you know. And there are two pieces of that interview that I found that I liked. One is that Lawrence O'Donnell reminded him that there are a lot of countries that we completely disregard, where people are suffering like hell and we've done nothing. And also, we really don't want to sit down there and fight a war with Russia. Let's listen to it and then we'll take it on the other side.
Let's listen to what Admiral Kirby, the Pentagon spokesperson, said today about this question of sending jets to Ukraine for their use. Let's listen to this.
We assess that adding aircraft to the Ukrainian inventory is not likely to significantly change the effectiveness of the Ukrainian Air Force relative to Russian capabilities. Therefore, we believe that the gain from transferring those MiG-29s is low. And finally, the intelligence community has assessed that the transfer of MiG-29s to Ukraine may be mistaken as escalatory and could result in a significant Russian reaction that might increase the prospects of a military escalation with NATO.
So some are making the point that the Ukrainian pilots are not flying now with the aircraft that they already have. And so jets don't appear to be what they need at this point.
That's not true. Frankly, I disagree with that assessment. I think we have to understand that one of the reasons that the Ukrainians aren't flying is because they don't have that many planes and they can't afford to lose them. They have to save some of that air power for when there's a crisis situation, let's say around Kiev. Those jets would be meaningful, as well as other kinds of support that we could provide with regards to unmanned aerial vehicles, intermediate range air defense. What I fear when I hear those kinds of statements and that kind of smoke and mirrors analysis, because I think, in fact, that's cherry picking some of the I know that there are divergent views within the intelligence community, and plenty of people think that this would not be escalatory and within the bounds of how the U.S. has conducted proxy warfare, how the Soviet Union and Russia have conducted proxy warfare. If this was any other country that wasn't doing a little bit of saber rattling, that wasn't somehow indicating that we were headed towards a nuclear war, we would have taken action a long time ago.
Colonel, we're running out of time. A couple of points there. First of all, there are many, many, many countries in the world where we've never considered 1 minute of intervention. We saw suffering in the Ethiopian civil war within the last year that wasn't even televised, wasn't even brought to American audiences. And so what we are seeing here is the most that the United States has ever done in supporting a country being invaded by another country short of war. And the other point about it is when you said it doesn't seem escalatory to you, it also doesn't seem escalatory to Admiral Kirby. He made that clear. The point is, would it be seen, the jets, would they be seen as escalatory by Vladimir Putin? And so what they are doing is trying to deal with an anticipation of Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, we can't, I mean, we should absolutely not be dismissive of nuclear saber rattling and the risks of escalation. What we can do is we can make risk-informed decisions, well thought out, well considered decisions and the consequences of those decisions informed by what we understand and what we have high confidence on with regards to Russian action.
Colonel, this is not a proxy war by Russia. This is a war by Russia against another country. This is not proxy. This is not them using another country's battlefield and supporting another country. That's proxy when you're supporting another country. This is direct, and there is no previous model that fits this particular conflict. We did not confront the Russians in Afghanistan. We are doing in Ukraine what we did in Afghanistan. The Russians confronted Afghanistan. We did not dare confront the Russians in Afghanistan.
We're saying the same thing, frankly, because what we're talking about is providing the Ukrainians with the material they need to fight it. I've never advocated for U.S. forces on the ground or in the air.
Everybody can. Actually, once he pretty much insinuating that is something that we should do. So, I mean, he's not being completely frank there, but the idea is he wants a lot more involvement than we would want to provide, than we should provide, to put it bluntly. Because again, Ukraine ain't no saint. Now, what Russia is doing is criminal, but Ukraine's as a country, it's not like they're pure, So let's be clear there. Let's be very, very pragmatic. Jen Psaki was asked a question about the bill, the extra COVID relief bill to extend it and do more things, right? And as it turns out, it's being blocked, right? It's being blocked by most of the Republicans, right? So here's a question, and watch how she answers it. I think the way she answers it is important, but I think it needed a bit more depth. Check this out.
Going back to COVID funding, obviously this is something that White House officials stressed today. This is something the president addressed in his State of the Union address. But if this is so important for the president and the White House, will he meet with Republicans individually? Will he make his case to them personally?
I would note that there's a number of Republicans who won't even return our phone calls about the impact of the lack of COVID funding and how they will impact their constituents. So that's probably the best place to start. Go ahead.
Yeah, how are you going to get it through Congress? You have Republicans in the Senate who are making it very clear, leadership saying that there is no Republican support for moving any more money for COVID relief because they believe the White House hasn't made a strong enough case that funds can't just be moved around to fund these priorities.
Sure. Well, we've been making that case publicly and privately back to earlier this year. So those are the facts. We've also been, as I just noted, attempting to engage with and have these conversations with, of course, Democrats, but also Republicans. COVID doesn't discriminate just by party at all. I think what we're trying to do is really be very clear and direct about what the impacts will be. I mean, some of these programs, funding for treatments for immunocompromised, providing free tests and masks, providing free boosters and vaccines, those will impact millions of Americans potentially in this country, regardless of their partisan affiliation. So what we're doing, we're going to, of course, leave the process and the vehicle up to Congress. We are encouraging them and aggressively calling for them to move these resources immediately. And what we've tried to do is break down what the impacts are going to be on different states and also when specific programs will end, so that it doesn't feel like just a number, but feels like a direct impact on programs and people's lives.
In terms of whether money can be moved around, I know you've said before that it can't be moved around. What we're hearing from the Hill is that they believe there's about $100 million that could be shifted. And certainly there was an agreement with the four leaders to shift funds that fell apart in part because governors balked. But is there money that could be moved? Do these dire consequences have to start next week, or could funds be shifted and then later allocated?
Well, the opposition, as you note, prevented that from being a portion of what moved forward, right? I don't know that opposition has changed at this point in time. But also, it's important to note that we believe that this should be provided on an emergency basis, not something where it will require offsets. It shouldn't have to require taking money from states who are using it for different programs, whether it's funding cops or police officers or other programs. That was a part of the discussion and the negotiation, but not aware of any change in the support for that.
The inhumanity of anyone who opposes this bill to enhance COVID support. And let's get it further. Do you think if it were on the other shoe, that it was Democrats holding up something that saves people's lives, that they wouldn't have gone much harder at it? I love Jen Psaki, but this one I don't think she's handling right. I think Jen Psaki immediately should come out and say, Republicans had no problem voting for military equipment for Ukraine. They had no problem spending $1 with the defense industrial complex. But when it comes to saving their fellow human beings in their states, they couldn't. They wanted offsets. Nobody asked for offsets for Ukraine. Nobody asked for assets whenever we're going to war. Nobody asked for assets when we're buying bombs, when we're buying these types of things. Why ask for offsets when we're trying to buy things to save people's lives? That is the direction of the argument that needs to be taken. We need to come out and say, the party of death is at it again. They will buy weapons of destruction, of killing, without batting an eye. But ask for weapons to heal. Ask for weapons to improve someone's humanity. Ask for weapons to make one's lives better. And their answer is crickets. No. You know, if anybody from President Obama's team or any of the media that to some seem like they weren't an attacker of the president would have been slaughtered. They would have been slaughtered if they had attempted what Tucker Carlson as well as Fox News and others have done. Check this out, and then we'll get it on the other side.
The brazen indefensibility of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression in Ukraine mean that Russia's propaganda machine has its work cut out for it. First, Putin tried to justify his war by claiming he was liberating Ukraine from Nazi rule. That fell flat. So now Russia's trying a new strategy, new false claims that U.S.-funded laboratories in Ukraine are building biological weapons to use against Russia, a kind of retread of the WMD argument from 20 years ago. Now, to be absolutely clear, it's a lie. There's zero actual evidence those labs are building weapons. It doesn't matter. The conspiracy, nevertheless, gaining steam on fringe far-right websites here in the U.S. In fact, as NBC reports, one cybersecurity expert has found, quote, the rhetoric on pro-Trump sites, which had largely been anti-Putin in the first days of the war, has shifted because of the Biolab conspiracy theory, a theory that has been actively entertained on Fox News by Tucker Carlson.
What exactly are they doing in these secret Ukrainian biolabs? Ukraine is the poorest country in Europe. It's hardly a hotbed of biomedical research. We're assuming these weren't pharmaceutical labs, probably not developing new leukemia drugs. From your answer, Tori Newland, we would assume, because you all but said it, that there's a military application to this research, that they were working on bioweapons.
Again, it's not a particularly clever method. They're like constant rhetorical questions, so you're never actually making a claim. It's very obvious, but that's the whole point, right? Tucker Carlson and Fox News CEO Suzanne Scott both know that Ukrainian labs are not making biological weapons. But it must be working for whatever agenda they have. As media critic Aaron Rupar notes, Tucker's rarely come out as nakedly pro-Putin. Instead, he's sort of anti-Putin, all framed as opposition to the forces in the U.S., mainly Democratic Party, which oppose Putin's war. And by extension, Tucker works to legitimize a lot of the Kremlin's favored talking points. And that's not really an exaggeration, just to be clear. I mean, people can say whatever they want, free country, but this is what's happening. It's what he's doing. The Kremlin itself sees Tucker as a useful asset. According to a leaked document translated by Mother Jones, a memo for Russian intelligence services to Russian media explaining why they need to play more of Carlson's show. Quote, it is essentially use as much as possible fragments of broadcasts of the popular Fox News host Tucker Carlson, who sharply criticizes the action of the United States and NATO, their negative role in unleashing the conflict in Ukraine, and the defiantly provocative behavior from the leadership of the Western countries in NATO towards the Russian Federation and towards President Putin personally. Now, again, maybe you don't know the provenance of that memo and you're skeptical of that, but let me tell you, it's on Russian state-owned television all the time, as people who watch it have been noting. But even as those state-owned news outlets in Russia are being told exactly what pro-war propaganda to use on air, there are incredibly brave protesters trying to get the truth out, even on state TV.
Amazing. Just think about it. Suppose anybody's related or supported by President Obama had ever done that, become the sycophant of Putin, become the resident, what would they like to call the resident of Putin, that's promoting the lies that Putin is putting out there. Suppose that were the case, we would have a riot in this country. I don't understand how Trump gets away with it. And I don't understand how Trump has people that stick with him as he generates this type of stuff. I don't understand how Tucker becomes the highest rated cable news, cable opinion news personality. I don't get it. But remember, these guys should be considered by you traitors. Hey guys, as you guys know, we have been alive for 52 years. And you know what? Venetia Williams, one of our board members, came out with a hell of an idea. And I want her to kind of pump it up for us. But all of you guys that are listening to us right now, Fund Drive is over, but we still need you guys. Hey, Venetia, tell us what you think not what you think, tell us what we as members of Pacifica, as members of KPFT need to do right now.
Well, right now, we celebrating our 52nd birthday. And because we didn't do anything last year because of COVID, everybody's been asking, what we going to do? 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 So I came up with 52 on 52, which means $52 for 52 years. It's a fundraiser I've done with countless other nonprofit organizations. And so the premise of it is that you just donate simple, Simon. You donate $52 for 52 years. That's all you got to do. And it's our birthday celebration, and that's what it's for.
Look, let me tell you, Pacifica KPFT is a hell of a radio station. We serve Houston. We're here to serve, and that's what we do. And, if you just go to our website and go to, wait, how do they donate anyway? You tell me.
Okay, they donate by going to kpft.org, and the Fund Drive phone number. I don't know that phone number by heart, but it's
713-526-5738. Come on, Venetia.
Okay, I never memorized. They need to get a simpler phone number, 526-6000 or something. I can't remember, but anyway, you just go to those two. You either go to the website or you go to the phone number and just follow the prompts. Well, and then how they ask you for what show you want it to be for. Just say 52 on 52.
Well, it'll come up. What? It's so funny. I did it even simpler because, I went on the website and that they had that thing that said PayPal. And since you guys going to key on
PayPal. I
just click on PayPal and I did the $52 because you embarrassed me in the board meeting because it was like, you mean you haven't done your $52 yet? And I did
not do that.
Hey,
I did not do.
Might as well you had. Because of
no, I said that all board members need to donate, and they do. Because when what's his name is working himself crazy trying to find grants. And the first thing, I'm serious, a lot of people, if you're not into grant writing, you don't understand it. But if they're going to shell out big money, the first thing they're going to ask you is, is your board 100%? Is your board 100%? And that's the first question they're going to ask. So $52, okay. And let's say, okay, it's hard times or whatever. You can stretch. I don't like to promote this, but you can stretch the $52 out for a year.
But you know what, Venetia, I follow your lead. And the truth of the matter is, you've been working in this business for a long time in making sure that people get good programming and making sure that these nonprofit radio stations can stay alive, especially in these times when we need it. I just want to thank you because everybody knows this 52 on 52 campaign is yours. It has a ring to it. And for all of you that are listening to Politics Done right now, this $52. Look, Venetia is one of our trusted members. And I tell you what,
that's so sweet.
If she says 52 on 52, let's do 52 on 52. So call right now, 713-526-5738. 52 on 52. Tell them that you want to give that $52. And I tell you what, the easy way, go to kpft.org and click the donate button or click the PayPal button, whichever one.
Click PayPal.
And choose $52 and keep this station alive. We're still working very hard to get that new building, that new equipment. And everything.
Yeah, we're getting a new building, y'all. And I got some ideas for that too, but I just did not say that out loud because all the parties haven't gotten together yet. But let's stick to 52 on 52 until you get all of that stuff hammered out, Venetia, and then we're gonna get it done. So, folks, again, I want to thank very kindly Venetia for appearing on Politics Done Right to promote this 52 on 52, because I tell you what, KPFT needs good people out there working their butts off for this station. And Venetia is one of our trusted members that's out there busting her butt for this station. Venetia Williams, thank you so kindly for coming on to KPFT. Thank you, and Bertal, you know I love you. You're one of my favorite people.
Well, you know, it's like ditto.
Yeah, you one of my favorite people.
We got it, girl. Thank you very much.
All right. No, thank you. And thank you, everybody.
52 on 52.
There you go. 52 on 52.
Thank you, folks. Once again with us, Thom Hartmann, a 4-time winner of the Project Censored Award, a New York Times bestselling author of 33 books, and America's #1 progressive talk show host. His show is syndicated and on local for-profit and nonprofit stations and broadcast nationwide and worldwide. It also is simulcast on television into nearly 60 million U.S. and Canadian homes. Senor Thom Hartmann, how are you doing today, my friend?
My buddy Alberto, it's great to be back with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, look, man, I tell you, you have another one out. And you know what I told you? Every time you release one of those guys, I want to be on that list. But this one, I was let me tell you, I had to just scan the thing. But I am intrigued by several of your chapters. New book is The Hidden History of Big Brother in America. What got you into writing that, Thom?
Well, I've been fascinated with the topic, and we're certainly seeing, creeping Big Brotherism here. Not just creeping. I mean, the Patriot Act kind of blew it through a wall, and as did the Telecommunications Act of '96, the Section 230, it's altered the world. I mean, there's the corporate big brothers and in some ways the government big brothers too. So I wanted to do a deep dive into both, which we did.
Well, and you sure did. I was going through the table of contents and I'm like, wait, I would have never thought about covering this in Big Brother or covering that in Big Brother. I mean, it was quite an enlightening enlightening thing. So let me hear. Is this the last in the series, or is the series continuing? The hidden history of series.
The next one I was doing the line edit on just before I called into your show. And it's going to be titled The Hidden History of Neoliberalism, How Reaganism United America, and How to Restore Our Greatness. As much as I kind of cringe at greatness, I don't get to pick the titles. The publishers do. But that's what it's about. And it'll be out in September. And then that's probably going to be the last one in the series, but we'll see.
Well, that one is going to be exciting. Anytime I hear the word neoliberal, you know how we feel about that, and the kind of things that we have to do about that. Anyway, so tell me, what got you into this? I mean, the beginning. You start Big Brother and the Puritans. Why did we start there?
Well, there have been two times in American history. I mean, people think of Big Brother, they think of 1984 George Orwell's novel, in which government is Big Brother and Big Brother's watching you, and all that kind of stuff. And there have been two periods in American history where we actually had Big Brother governments. I mean, like George Orwell style Big Brother governments. The first, well, not the first, but one of them, the first one I treat in the book, is the plight of people who were not Puritans in Massachusetts and southern New Hampshire back from the 1600s, right up till the constitutional era. In fact, for this reason, Massachusetts almost didn't join the Republic.
Yeah.
And, they had laws requiring that you had to go to church, you had to pay taxes to the local church, you had to treat the church elder as if he was, the senior official in the community, with great deference and all that sort of thing. And there were these three Quaker women who just weren't having it, and they refused to go to church, and they weren't paying their taxes. And so the head, this was in Dover, New Hampshire, and John Greenleaf Whittier made it famous with a poem titled "When the Women Came from Dover," which I quote in the book. And this pastor, his name was Hate Evil Nutter. That was his name. Honestly, his first name was Hate Evil, all one word, and his second name was Nutter, and which I suppose is enough to make you crazy. But anyway,
the Nutter part, yeah.
He felt that he was being disrespected by these women because they weren't showing up in his church. So he ordered the town constable to tie them to the back of a horse cart in the middle of winter. There was 3 feet of snow on the ground, strip them naked to the waist, whip them until they were bloody, and then drag them in the back of this cart to the next town where the process would be repeated. And this went on through 3 or 4 towns. I forget how many. It's in the book. And finally, a constable stopped. And it was a fairly well-known story that, like I said, Whittier turned into one of the more famous poems in American literary history. So that was the first. The second, of course, was slavery. If a person was Black in this country from 1619, arguably up to quite recently, Big Brother was watching. Big Brother was controlling. And certainly during the slavery era, up until the end of the Civil War, the South was a complete police state. You cannot, and you and I have talked about this before when oligarchy came out, you cannot enforce slavery without a police state. It's an absolute necessity. But by 1840, as a result of the invention of the cotton gin and its high price, so only big plantations could buy one, and it made a plantation 50 times more productive in terms of cleaning cotton. Because of that, by the 1840s, the South had become an oligarchy, just a fascist state. Elections were meaningless. Ballot boxes were stuffed. The people who could run for election were only members of the roughly 1,000 oligarchic families in the South who owned basically the South. Everybody elected to any kind of political office of any consequence was from one of these families. If you were white and you defied these families, you could get hanged, you could get whipped, you could get imprisoned, you could get driven out of the states. And so really, the Civil War was not a war between the North and South. It was the war between a fascist oligarchy in the South that no longer had any loyalty to democracy whatsoever against a Republican democracy in the North, at least to the extent that it was, with men voting and not women, and by and large not Black people voting also. But still, it was that those were the two systems. And so that was our second Big Brother era. And then,
before you go to the next one, because there's something that kind of puzzled me when I was scanning through the book, right? And the chapter that came out to me was Big Brother invents whiteness to keep power. And it is something that before reading your book, I would talk about on my station, particularly telling people, hey, this was designed for some to keep power. It wasn't designed for white people. It was designed for some to hold power. And when I saw that you brought that into the fold, it was like, oh, wow. Yeah, Tom, why don't you elaborate on that for me?
Well, thank you. I can't claim originality to that. I learned it from the 1619 Project and several other books that were written around that time. But basically what was happening is, starting in 1619, slavery was a thing here in North America. And by the middle of the early 1600s, the 1630s, if I'm remembering correctly, and I would refer you to Nicole Hannah-Jones's book.
Yeah, Nicole Hannah-Jones.
Yeah. But around that time, poor whites, first of all, many of the Africans who were brought over were just one generation of slavery, or it was impressment, or it was, I forget the word for where you have to pay back your fare.
Indentured servitude.
Indentured servitude. Thank you. Bless you. And that was the case with many of the white people who came to this country as well. And so they were finding common purpose with each other. And there were a number of rebellions that were black and white rebellions against rich people. And so the good fathers of Virginia, specifically in the 1630s, as I recall, in fact, I think 1636 was the big year for it, but it's been a year since I wrote the book. I'd have to go back and look at it. Basically they said, okay, we're going to enforce this caste system, but we're going to do it the lazy way. We're going to make it so that, anybody, you can just instantly look at them and know which caste they are in America. And thus they literally invented whiteness. I mean, slavery had existed forever in history. The Romans had slaves, the Greeks had slaves, but their slaves looked just like them. Right. I mean, occasionally they'd take slaves from nearby people that they had conquered. So maybe the slaves spoke a different language or looked slightly different from them. But by and large, slavery was not a racial thing. But we invented that. America invented that. Virginia invented whiteness, and it still haunts us. And now it's spread around the world like the poison that it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when we move on now from the social aspect and we hit the corporate aspect of Big Brother, I think if you follow your lead, that is probably one of the most corrosive and dangerous portions of this.
I think so, because in particular, or what amplifies it is the Supreme Court saying that corporations are persons and that persons can buy politicians, and that it's all just free speech, political bribery.
I want to stop you right there, because I want to tell you, I met you during the Move to Amend days and the Coffee Party days. I remember. You were one of the huge advocates that came out there and spoke to us about people, personhood, and all of that. So I want to give you a late thanks on that, because that was an important thing then.
Well, thank you, Egberto. Yeah, I wrote a book about it called Unequal Protection in 2002. The subtitle was How Corporations Became Persons. And so, it's particularly problematic when corporations not only have the ability to own politicians, write their own legislation, but can also basically know everything about you. We really don't know if any corporations have done what J. Edgar Hoover did. I mean, I mentioned in the book that Hoover, in fact, very early in the book, that Hoover was, a gay man at the political pinnacle of power. And at a time in the United States in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, when just simply being gay was enough to get you imprisoned or murdered. And but he used political spying, Big Brother, government spying, to compile dossiers on virtually every politician and business leader who might ever challenge him. And, right up until 1960, in fact, because he was being blackmailed by Santo Trafficati down in Miami, he and Clyde Tolson used to go down to Hialeah and gamble, and Trafficati would give them money and young boys and access to the racetrack and things, and give them rooms in the hotel. Traficante was blackmailing him. And so he was denying that there was even such a thing as organized crime right up until 1960. That year, there were only, I think, 17 prosecutions for organized crime in the United States. Then Bobby and John Kennedy came in. And Bobby in 61, the first year, had over 700 prosecutions of organized crime, which is when Traficante and Marcello found their backs to the wall and decided that they were going to do something about the Kennedys. But that's kind of a whole nother book that I wrote a number of other years ago.
I'm going to be interested in that offshoot, the Kennedys and the mob. But go ahead.
That book is called Legacy of Secrecy that I co-wrote with Lamar Waldron. And it's about, the both Kennedy assassinations and the Martin Luther King assassination. But I forgot where we were.
No, that's how we're talking about the corporations and
yeah. And so, I don't know if any corporations have compiled dossiers on particular members of Congress and said, if you don't say something, this might get out. But we live in a time when it's a very real possibility. I actually don't even present that as a possibility in the book. I'm just speculating with you right now. But I don't see how it's not. Again, we're just talking about speculation, and you wouldn't be able to put that in a book. I understand that, but it's not hard to believe how these guys come up with certain laws that they know the average American citizen simply don't want, unless that's the case. Yeah. I've assumed up until recently that, when legislators are passing laws that they know most people don't want and that they know are going to be harmful to America and Americans, that they're doing it because they've been bought. They've been paid off. But it's not inconceivable that they're being blackmailed as well. I just think that that's less likely. That's the kind of thing that, I was going to say that's the kind of thing that would probably get out. But, Hoover's blackmail of everybody didn't get out until after he died.
Exactly.
So
exactly. So you never know about that. So when it comes to, you also link capitalism in there. I personally think that capitalism needs all these types of coercions, and absent these coercions, you can't have a system as we have it at the same as where it really is abusive to people, and at the same time people tolerate it, and therefore coercion is necessary. Your thoughts on that relative to what you've written?
By coercion, what do you mean?
Well, you cannot have people work themselves off for the profit of others and not complain about it. You cannot have people who simply say, come out to the defense of, let's say, the real capitalists, as they do, if they're not coerced into the thought process that have them doing that. And I think in a lot of ways, knowing our internals probably presents that case.
Yeah, well, you make a good argument for it. I mean, again, I think that it's not so much that, if a group of people want to unionize, that Amazon is spying on their purchasing history, and they're going to use it against them. I think it's more that Amazon will simply hire union busters to come in and scare the hell out of them. I think that the big club here right now is money, not implied or even direct coercion.
Oh, so you think it's mostly? But let me ask you this then, Thom.
I don't know.
Let's push that a little further.
Sure.
It's money. Okay. How does the money get one to do what they need to do?
Well, money is a form of coercion. I mean, if you don't have enough to eat, money is food. If you don't have a place to stay, money is shelter. If you don't have, the clothing you need to protect yourself from elements when winter comes, money is survival. And in addition to all the things that we generally think of it as, as status and as leisure and as, whatever. And so I think that you can build a strong case. And frankly, this is the case that was built back in the 1930s to come up with the National Labor Relations Act, the Wagner Act in 1935, to legalize unions. You could build a strong case that the power that an employer has over a non-unionized employee is extraordinary, particularly during a time of widespread poverty, which was very much the 1930s, and is increasingly America today, sadly. So, yeah, I think we could frame it entirely in a coercion frame.
It is amazing that because I did a piece 2 days ago with Larry Summers, and Larry Summers appeared on TV, and I'm going to tie this into your book. But Larry Summers came on and he explained he thought he was explaining to what I call a naive audience that after you've gotten 4% or so in wage increases, that it automatically generates inflation that actually takes back more than your increased income was. And then he starts
crap.
I know. And then he starts to bring up and he says, and by the way, Ukraine creates a lot of wheat. So therefore, there's going to be a lot of transportation. We can overproduce more oil if we wanted to, which means from U.S. ports, we'll have ships going from U.S. ports with this oil to deliver whatever. So he intermingled in there, and we're going to have to start thinking about having ships not follow the Jones Act and go and simply go to the cheapest shipper. So he attacked inflation as justified, wages as being the causation of inflation, the reduction of he in one package, right? And I'm like, talking about subliminal messaging to tell the workers, don't ask for too much. It was just amazing. And when I tie that into what we're talking about, Big Brother, it is like Big Brother telling you all these things that will occur in this scenario.
Yeah, Larry Summers is a neoliberal.
It's going good for your next book.
Yeah, it's a little too late to write him into it, but if he's not in it, I'll have to go.
He probably, I bet he's in it because he was there with Obama and when we came up, so I bet he's in there. But second thing, globalism and Big Brother. Tell me about it with respect to the book. Well, the InfoWars.
Right. It's a tough one. I mean, globalism is like, one category and Big Brother is kind of another. What's happening with regard to a global response to Big Brother, I can directly address, which is...
Right, that's what I meant. Actually, I'm going from your part 3.
Okay. So the European Union has come up with a set of basic rules, rights for people who are users of the internet. And you're seeing the consequence of this when you visit websites and they say, well, you accept cookies. The requirement is that you have to disclose things, that people are being tracked and things like that. And there are limits on the ways and technologies that can be used to track people. There's also a really cool thing called the right to be forgotten that the European Union has now recognized, which came out of a lawsuit from a Spaniard who was very upset that his name, he had been involved in a bankruptcy back in the late 90s. And whenever anybody Googled his name, because he was a low profile guy, that was the only thing that showed up. And he wanted it to take it off the search engines. And so they're pretty vigorous about it. Plus, here in the United States, we're the only developed country in the world that allows your internet service provider, the company that's bringing the internet into your home, to observe absolutely everything you're doing online. They can watch every keystroke, read every email, look at every website you visit, even know how quickly or slowly you scroll down the page, stopping at particular pictures or headlines or ads. They know all this stuff and they can record it and they can sell it. And so there's that. And then that's the result of Donald Trump having hired Verizon lawyer Ajit Pai as the head of the FCC and blowing up what we referred to as net neutrality. I always thought it should have been referred to as net privacy because it was really about Title II of the Telecommunications Act, which has been used since the 1930s to say that if you want to wiretap somebody, if you want to listen on the phone conversation, you have to have a warrant signed by a judge. And up until Donald Trump and Ajit Pai got a hold of the FCC, that was the law with regard to the internet in the United States too. And it still is everywhere else in the world. So, we've got a serious privacy problem. The other big problem that has gone worldwide, but really started here in the United States, is that, let me give you a setup for this. Starting around the year 1000, around the time of the Magna Carta, 1100.
Computers then.
Yeah, no computers then. There was this notion. It's sometimes referred to as the castle doctrine, that a man's castle at home is his castle. But the flip side of that is that if it's your castle, you're responsible for what happens in it. So if you, Egberto, were to go out and put a sign out in front of your house, Saturday afternoon that says "Big party Saturday night, 10 p.m. Everybody welcome," and you leave the door open, and just every reprobate in the community comes in. So just anybody who's looking for some someplace they can get away with some kind of skeezy activity that nobody else would allow. So you're sitting there in your house and it's midnight and this has been going on for a while. And there's somebody in the back room getting raped. And there's somebody over here showing child porn against the TV wall and a couple of people in the corner shooting up heroin. And the police walk in. Who goes to jail? Well, all those criminals and you, because it's in your house. You're responsible for it. And if you allow criminal activity in your home and you don't stop it or report it, you go to jail too. So like I said, that has literally been in British common law for 1,000 years.
Yeah. And
it was an American law all that time. Well, in 1996, in the Telecommunications Act of 1996, Section 230, the geniuses who wrote this thought, hey, let's carve an exception into this. We'll leave it intact that, if Tom has a party in his house and terrible things happen, he can be held accountable. But if he builds a house on the internet, even if he's inviting in people, as long as he's not doing it, as long as he invites in other people who are selling child porn or who are selling drugs or who are terrorists and organizing bombings and attacks on January 6th and stuff like that, as long as it's his house, but he's not doing it, he has no responsibility at all. Mm-hmm. And thus, within a couple of years, Mark Zuckerberg became one of the richest guys in the world.
That is a shame. Without giving,
we need to do something about it. And by the way, who wrote a pretty good book about this is Josh Hawley. I mean, you've got Republicans as well as Democrats who are pretty flipped out about Section 230.
Well, weren't they trying to change that? It wasn't Congress having hearings trying to change that law?
They still are. And, at the time that Hawley wrote his book, it was when Trump was still president. And the whole sales pitch was, Facebook just took down Donald Trump. We need to regulate these big companies. But, in his book, he raises the second half of the book is just, it's about how liberals are going to destroy America. But the first half of the book is a pretty good documentation of how Section 230 has just wreaked havoc on our country.
Well, I mean, it sure has, both with the election, you name it, you got it. Without giving the end of your book, how do we rein this in? Just kind of topically, not anything in detail.
Well, I think that, number one, we need to deal with Section 230 and get that under control. Number two, we need to break up some of these giant monopolies. No one company should control 80 or 90% of an industry like Google does with search, for example, or Facebook does with social media. Number three, we need to adopt the European privacy laws, the GDPR, I think it's the
GP. Yeah.
Whatever it is. We need to adopt that or something like it. And California is kind of leading on that, but they can't do things that the federal government could do. And finally, we need to end the so-called net neutrality, or we need to restore net neutrality, and Ajit Pai and Donald Trump's sabotage of the Telecommunications Act and the Title II of the Telecommunications Act of 1930, whatever it was.
It's funny.
As a starting point. Plus, we need to wait
years ago
as to how they're being spied on.
And I'm still, even though Europe has better laws, I still sit down here and wonder sometimes, but do they really work? Because it's a pipe. I don't know. I think you need great laws in the front end and the back end. I agree. What? I actually wrote an article on the net neutrality for common dreams about, I don't know, years ago. And it just popped up recently. And I'm like, oh, I forgot about that several years ago during our move to amend days.
Oh, yeah. You were at the front of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, we were with this stuff a long, long time. Tom, first of all, folks, you guys have to go out there and get that book. And, I get a lot of people on here and I don't just tell them to go get the book, but this is one. Well, every book that Tom writes, you got to get out there and get. So don't forget to go ahead. No, Tom, it's you put the stuff in there. The hidden history of Big Brother in America: how the death of privacy and the rise of surveillance threaten us and our democracy. Folks, I'm going to tell you, don't only get that book, get the whole damn series, because if progressives are going to do the work that's necessary to recover all that went wrong in this country, we need these different, we need pathways. And, I love your book, the one that you did on healthcare. I mentioned that book and I promote that book all of the times because I think it is a very, very important read. This one is a very important read, though I have only scanned it. I have to be honest about it. But again, a very important read. Thom Hartmann, thank you so, well, you know what? Thank you so kindly for the book. Thank you kindly for appearing once again on Politics Done Right. And I cannot wait for the next one.
And thank you so much for having me, Egberto. It's always a pleasure talking with you. I always enjoy our conversations. Thank you so much.
You can listen and or watch Politics Done Right Mondays through Fridays on Facebook Live at facebook.com/politicsdoneright or on YouTube Live at politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. Please do not forget to follow me on Twitter for updates. My Twitter handle is @EgbertoWillies, @EgbertoWillies. But don't you forget, listen to us live on air at KPFT 90.1 FM on Thursdays at noon and at Fridays at 11 a.m. all Central Time. Please get one of my several books out there. As I see it, Class Warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom, for a contribution of $120. It's worth it. How to talk to your right-wing relatives, friends, and neighbors for a contribution of $120. How to make America utopia, take away the economy from those who rigged it, for a pledge of $120. Get any 2 of those books for $200, any 3 of those books for $250. The contributions for my books go directly to support our station, KPFT 90.1 FM. Alternatively, folks, please get your basic KPFT only membership for $40, a Pacifica only membership for $25, or choose from one of our many other gifts for your contribution. Just go to kpft.org, choose Politics Done Right for the program, and select an option either for our books or something else to support the station. It is definitely worth it. Please remember to keep your community radio station in your minds. Keep KPFT on your mind. Talk about it. Tell your friends about it. Tell them you know about this station in town, 90.1 FM Houston, that needs your support. That is there to provide that nourishment that we need. KPFT 90.1 FM Houston. Well, folks, that's it for today. You know how I'm going to end this baby. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out. Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EgbertoWillies. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.